Welcome to a new day of experiences, and a new day of uncovering truth. Our goal, as always, is to resurrect truth. So let us begin by asking if there are any questions based upon what we talked about yesterday or in subsequent days, in previous days, or are there any comments that you may have concerning anything that has crossed your pathway? We had a great discussion yesterday that actually morphed into an understanding of the power of silence. And I I'm asking if there are uh, those of you who would have questions about that or further comments about it. If so, please raise them now.
Good day, everyone. I have a question to ask.
Hmm.
Um, my question is people of African descent have been oppressed by colonization for hundreds of years. And in our country, it's been over 400 years. Yet the Europeans in this country has only been struggling for about 3 months. My question is, why do people of color or of African descent feel obligated to save Europeans when they've historically ignored our guidance and voted against their best interests, meaning the Europeans' best interest or mankind? Also, why do people of African descent feel obligated to save the white fragility?
Um, I think when it comes to white fragility, I think people of color, especially Africans, overlook that. And one of the reasons is because everything that we have said in regards to our being oppressed for generations, we have been told we're playing the race card. And the subconscious defense to that is not to even mention anything that is going to upset white people. The other thing is that one of the reasons I believe that our people of African descent, Africans rather, because you're of African descent, you're African. Um, uh, One of the reasons that Africans seek to bring healing or to help is because our nature. Yet we are, however, by being silent, we are helping, and we have been helping. In the past, we have shown that nothing works. The marches, the bills that were supposedly passed that were full of loopholes, all of these things have shown that the government is not the way to go in terms of change, and being in the streets is not the way to go because they have sought different ways to keep us out of the street, and now in the demonstrations by us will be met by police force and very possibly by military force by them declaring martial law. I believe that there are those on the fringes of what we know the truth to be, and what I mean by that is no one sent out a memo, and um, no one put it out there on social media that we're not going to go out. We just didn't do it. And there is something in the psyche of the African that reaches each of us. And I think by virtue of us putting things in the macro and creating that sensitivity of spirituality, we were able to send the message or get the message across that this is not our fight. We did what we were supposed to do. So anyone now, well, most of those who are still wanting to get in the streets are missing the point. Those who want to get in the street to quote unquote help um, the ones who voted against their self-interest. Well, we helped Europeans when there was affirmative action. Affirmative action did not help us. It helped white women. DEI helped white women. So all these things that were purported to help us did not help us. It helped the ones who were voting against their self-interest. And now it is time for them to see the consequences, or to experience the consequences of voting against their self-interest. And it's not just the white women, of course, it's the white males, but then we've understood that all along. So when you also consider the mindset, the European mindset that many of us still hold on to, you can see more clearly, I do believe, the reason that that there's always a push to do what the white people are doing, and but telling us that we need to be helping them by getting in the streets is simply another way of saying we need to be doing what the white people are doing. So I hope that helps you, Myra. And if anyone else would like to speak to that, please do it at this time.
This is Barbara. May I just add something to reiterate what you just said? Getting out there now would be a distraction because of all of the examples that you gave. Military intervention, potentially martial law, potentially would be an excuse for the administration to do all of that, which then would take away from the issue of people of European mindset really not seeing the direct effect of what's happening with them. They would then potentially project onto us, well, yeah, that's the reason why we're doing all this. That's the reason we're in this. But we refuse to be the external distraction for them, for looking at themselves, their own mindset, their own issues, their own projections, if you will, in the past. And so it's an opportune time. The silence is necessary.
Thank you. Myra, does that help?
Can I add something?
Of course.
Yes, it does.
When Trump won that election, we felt a certain way. And I mean the people on this phone. It felt empty. It felt discouraging, and for a minute they're very frustrating. But it gave us a message, and it brought us back and put us back into focus. Now, my supposition is this. What if we had to go through that, not only for us, but for all mankind, to see that politics and elections were not what they should be looking for? Because it hit us like a ton of bricks. And maybe because it hit us like a ton of bricks, that energy was put in the macro and it hit everybody else like a ton of bricks. One of the things that I think is a marker to us not looking political anymore is immediately after the election, Joyce Reid lost her show. I think it was indicating that people were no longer looking at this thing politically. It was something else to focus on. We looked at this, we put our all into this, and this was not the answer. And I think that energy may have come from us because of what we felt when this thing bottom dropped out of it, so to speak, or we thought it did anyway. So all that stuff that you guys have said, I'm agreeing with it. I'm just kind of going back a little bit, and I hope kind of shedding a little more light onto it, how we got here.
Ron, I think it was more than your supposition. I think it was spot on. because we had to understand,
Yeah.
as well as everybody else, the issue is not Donald Trump. He's simply what the catalyst, if you will, to spark that inner vision, if you will, for people to see themselves as they truly are. That he's that catalyst, the opportunity for them to uncover the truth of who they really are. So you're right. It's not about politics. It's bigger than that.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank
I think that we were seeing it, even though we were saying in the past that it was not about politics. After the election, we went through what we did because subconsciously it was about politics. And when we discussed it with Kathy brought to our attention what we were dealing with. I mean, the reason we were responding the way we were, it is at that point that we embrace what we have been said, that this is a spiritual journey, that this is about spirituality. And I believe now that there are those who believe it's about politics. They want to recall people. They are challenging the town hall meetings. But what I believe they don't realize is that they are moving to a place where they see this is bigger than politics, but they don't see it yet. And the pressure that comes from voting against your own interests, that kind of pressure will push them to a place where they're searching for something different. And then they will see that this is about spirituality, even though they won't call it that necessarily. But their
Yeah.
whole attitude and approach will change. That's what I'm trying to say. Anyone else?
What does the word vigility, if I'm pronouncing it right, what does the word vigility mean based upon the question that the young lady raised? I'm not familiar with that word.
Fragility means weak or fragile. It comes from the word fragile. And it comes from a book that the term comes from a book, that white fragility. White people, especially white women, present themselves as being so fragile until the least little thing upsets them when it comes to Africans in this country, especially. For example, I know you've heard of the Karens of the world. White women who are confronted by people, by Africans in particular, always shed tears and call the police and say that they were attacked, even when they are doing the attacking. So that's the fragility, one portion of it anyway, that we are talking about. Does that help you, George?
Yeah. Thank y'all.
Anyone else? I want to approach something based on what we just said, if I may.
Okay.
We talked about white fragility. We talked about us truly embracing the spiritual nature of what we are doing. The thing that we have not, one of the things that we have not discussed is the resurgence of segregation. That's one of the things that we did not discuss. However, I think it warrants at least some attention because it is one of those things that was birthed with this country and was brought forward even after the 1865. And now, would you make sure your phones are muted, please? And now we see the concept of segregation raising its head again. And I'm hoping that none of you are upset by that. One of the reasons I say that, which 362, would you mute your phone, please? One of the reasons I say that is because I lost my train of thought.
Segregation.
Segregation, yeah. One of the reasons you said you ask us not to get upset by it. You hope we're not upset by it.
And one of the reasons is because it was the African elite who pushed for segregation. It was the leading people in our communities as opposed to the rank and file people who pushed for integration, rather. I can't count the number of people who were rank and file people who said, we don't want to integrate. Why you want to be with them? But the churches pushed it very strongly. And the harder it was pushed, the more resistance it met. Finally, white people figured out something. We're going to call it segregation, but we're going to do assimilation. And they did that. They took everything we had and made it inferior to everything they had in our minds, or in the minds of African people. And during that period of segregation, there were colored and white water fountains. And we never drink from one of those fountains because we were always told that white folks are nasty and they're evil. Ain't no telling what they put in that water. And here we are now again facing this segregation. I listened to a portion of something on a video the other day, but and it spoke to this idea of segregation very clearly. What can happen to us that has not happened to us? We were enslaved. Our women were raped. Our men were murdered. Our children were sold to other people. We as a whole became property as opposed to humans in their eyes. We were given a religion of bondage, and during that religion of bondage, lynchings were justified. They kept us away out of their schools. They didn't want us to have an education, period. They kept us out of their hospitals. They marginalized our women, and they sought to turn the African men against African women. They made sure that we stayed on plantation. The housing projects were truly outdoor concentration camps that they kept us in. They used the zip codes, and everyone thought zip codes was for efficiency when they were not. The zip code came into this country, was put into the laws of this country so that they could redline, they can do redlining more efficiently. They made sure that we could not come in some of their stores, and when you tried When you want to buy a pair of shoes, African could not put their foot in a pair of shoes to try it on. All of these things have been done to us during the course of segregation. So I raised the question, what more can they do to us? What can they do to us that's worse than what we've already endured? So when we talk about this idea of segregation, I don't want you to be dismayed by it because we have experienced it before. Now, some of you generationally have not experienced what some of us experienced during that period of time. And to be honest with you, I hope you don't have to experience it. However, if you do, don't lose sight of who you are and remember that that's not the end of the world. It is the beginning of a more refined and more civilized world because the idea of segregation has made us, has rather put Europeans in a position where they think that they are superior. And the superiority is based upon their ability to kill us, as opposed to what they call an intellectual superiority. They stole our history, they stole our creations, and they appropriated our culture because they don't have a substantive culture at all. So keep these things in mind when you are confronted with the ideas of segregated society. The other thing is that even with the segregation, why would we get out there? There's no point in us doing that. That's their problem. That's the white people problem, not ours. So that's a battle that we should not even think about fighting because the battle is not ours. The end of support for HBCUs that they are trying to bring into play now, don't worry about it. When you really think about it, we got a better education when we were segregated. So what I'm saying in essence is this: regardless of what is put out there, regardless of what was meant for our bad, we have always survived it, and we have always come together more closely than we were prior to all this happening. Matter of fact, integration is what separated us from our communities. And now, what is the African doing? We are extending our communities in spite of this effort to segregate. What we realize is that they need us more than we need them. And when you are looking at people who are seeking to do what they have done all over again, when we look at people who separate people based on race, based on religious denomination, based upon sexuality, when we see people who are doing that, and when we see them enforcing it with violence, what do we see? What we're actually seeing is a group of people who needs to be civilized. And people who are uncivilized must bring forth all those things that are not civil in order for those who are civilized to be able to bring civilization to them. And all this about segregation, all of this about taking the names of Africans from the DOD websites and from all this about making sure that our history is not studied in school, all these things about the attempts to erase our history even from the internet, all of these things are being done because this group of people are trying to appropriate our culture and our attitudes because they know that they are barbarian. They know that they are not civilized. There is no way that you can believe that these people are civilized when you look at what they are willing to do. And one of the primary examples of that is what's happening in Gaza right now and what's happening in Israel proper, because the younger people are beginning to see these are not the acts of a civilized nation or of a civilized people. These are the actions of people who need to be civilized, even though they're not calling it that. The battle is to appropriate, um, rather than allow them to appropriate our history, we ourselves began to put in the macro, will continue to put in the macro, the truth that's being resurrected. And that truth involves empathy, sympathy, forgiveness, mercy, loving kindness, etc. So, so all of these things that are raising their head again are the things that needs to be dealt with now, because they were not dealt with in the beginning. In the beginning of the Reconstruction, what we did was made every effort to be like them, but in our own communities. We began to see people who were more in a financial, more financially stable, began to look down on people who were not. We saw our separations within our own ranks of brown bag societies rising up in Charleston, where if you were darker than a brown bag, you couldn't be in the society. Those kind of things were not dealt with, and now they are being dealt with. They are not only being questioned, but the true nature of them are being exposed. So I don't want us to think for a moment that that the oppressors were the only oppressors. We were oppressors of ourselves because of the European mindset that we embraced. We became oppressive. Would you mute your phones, please? You make sure your phones are muted. 2111, would you make sure your phone is muted? Thank you. We are we begun to be oppressors because the mindset that we were trying to emulate. And as I said, one of them was brown bag society, the other one was talking about nappy-headed. Would you mute your phone, please? The other was talking about nappy-headed people. We talked about that. We talked about how made it almost a sin to be black, really dark skinned, and we were ashamed of that for a long period of time. So I say all of this to say that segregation came to us in two ways. It came to us from the oppressor directly, and it came to us from each other indirectly from the oppressor by virtue of us embracing the principles that the oppressors were using to keep us separated. So, and quite frankly, there was a greater closeness during enslavement than it was after slavery. Because if you look at the history of enslavement, there were efforts to take care of each other more so than sometimes when we were in our communities where people felt like they were better than us. Africans felt like they were better than each other because they had curly hair or light skin. So we have to avoid that type of segregation ourselves if we are going to bring unity to the world. And we put this thing of whiteness and blackness to where it should be. Whiteness, white people did not come into existence until I think it's around 1691 or something like that. And that was when they first identified themselves as being white. It was in the late 1600s or the late 1700s when they identified themselves as being white. And that was for justification for slavery. But prior to that, there was no race. There was no division based upon race. It was division based upon the ability to dominate people because you had weapons of mass destruction and you had no qualms about using it. So I wanted to put this out there because I want not this to be also in the macro, because there are still people who say things like African people who are saying things like, "Oh yeah, she got good hair." What is good hair? And what they don't realize is that when you use extensions in your hair, you better be careful with them, because a lot of those extensions and wigs that are being used, the hair that's used for braiding is poison. It's carcinogenic, and that's a known fact that it's carcinogenic. So stop trying to be who you're not, and be settled with the essence of who you are. Does that make sense?
Yes.
sir.
Hey,
So
you can go ahead. I'll hear you.
okay,
Yeah.
I simply am saying that it is important for us to be not only proud of who we are, but recognizing some of the shortcomings as well. And this whole idea of castigating people of a different sexual orientation, homosexuality. Um, and actually, homosexuality, the railing against homosexuality, came from uh, European, came from Christianity. It did not come from us. It came from Christianity, and and if you really think about it, it's all about projection. When you look at the ones who pastors in particular, Caucasian pastors in particular, who are being arrested for sexual activities in public, or with same sex, or being arrested for molesting kids. That did not come from us. That did not come from us. We dealt with people for who they are, as opposed to their sexual orientation, or the color of their skin, or the and other rather than other physical things that they had no control over. So I also think that this whole idea of sexuality should be open, must be open for discussion, because that's one of the things where we are lacking in terms of our true understanding of the nature of it. And right now, there are those who still see homosexuals as being some people who should be branded or excised from the community, excommunicated from our churches, unless you need a musician. So I think the respect for these for people, period, should be brought into context, and the context that we use for the embrace of humans is that they are human, regardless of whether you like what they do or not. It is not you who have been appointed judge, jury, and executioner when it comes to things like that. So, and I bring that up also because the book that Ron refers to often, the spirit of intimacy, also deals with this whole idea of homosexuality, as do some of the material I read in relationship to Native Americans and how they approach homosexuality. And if you think about homosexuality and how it is presented through Christianity in Africa, it is by arresting homosexuals or actually executing them. And all that came from Christian white folks. Any questions or comments?
Pastor, this is Charles. I have a question, and I hope you can, tell me more about it. I'm going to throw it out there so everybody listen to what I'm saying. You remember the water tucking destroy everything on the earth except Noah and his family. And Noah was supposed to get it right in that time, but he didn't. And you remember the word said, the next time it'll be fire. And a lot of people thinking it's going to be the nuclear weapon and all that right there. I'm thinking the fire is going to be from the Holy Spirit. And I'm thinking that's now. Now, help me to understand that.
I can't remember what Noah means. Anybody can remember what Noah means? The reason I say that, Charles, is because this is not about a literal flood that was taking place any more than it is about a literal fire that's taking place. All of this literacy, not literacy, all of these biblical principles being taken literally came from Christianity. It did not come from us. There are things in the Bible, like for example, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, and the Word was with God. That came from the Torah people. That was one of their songs that was rendered. They've been singing it for millions of years. So what I'm saying is that what we have been taught from the scriptures have been taught by those who oppressed us for the purpose of keeping us oppressed. And when we look at the stories in the scriptures, they are not literal at all. So this is not a literal flood that took place. And if we're going to believe what we were told through Christianity, that it was a literal flood, then we also have to believe that because of the color of our skin, we were brought into the earth to be enslaved by Europeans. So this cannot possibly be literal or literally the way that it was presented to us. Is there anyone else who has something to add to this? Because I know we've discussed this before, but at this point, I don't remember much of what we said.
Noah means to rest, by the way.
To rest.
Yeah, or to repose.
That's something, because when it talks about and death and hell will be cast into the lake of fire, the lake of fire means to repose. So this is talking about a renewal process.
And I think to add on to that, it represents God's grace and mercy, but the promise of a new beginning, after judgment, which symbolizes by the flood, in the rainbow covenant, as another addition to what Ron was saying. But, God's grace and mercy and the promise of a new beginning,
And that makes sense. And in the new beginning, the new beginning, it's funny because of the way this new beginning is ending, of the things that happened during the course of this new beginning. The enslavement of us, the continued oppression, and the next time will be by fire, meaning that the next time will be it will be purification, and that purification can only come from spirituality. And as I think Charles has a good observation in saying that, raised the question of making a statement that that's what we are now. Ron?
Well, I wanted to make sure we're done what we're talking about that, because I want to go back to sexuality, but I want to make sure.
Okay. Does anyone want to speak to or raise questions about what we just said based upon what Charles raised?
I just want to add that there is some geological evidence of a literal flood happening in ancient times in that part of the world. But we also know that the story of Noah is the same story that's of Gilgamesh in the Sumerian text. So even though there might have been a literal flood, I think they just used it to build a story onto it to either get a certain point across or to create a certain narrative. So I think they're taking some literal historical facts and using them to create a certain narrative, to create a certain theological idea.
Yeah. I'm curious, Audrey, the other text that you mentioned, when was it written? Was it written before the scriptures?
Yeah, the Sumerian text.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's cuneiform writings. Yeah, long before the scriptures.
Okay.
And the Sumerians are us.
That's interesting.
Thank you, Audrey. I didn't know that.
You're welcome.
Um, I'm really last few days I've been looking at something on. I was looking at the spirit of intimacy and looking at homosexuality and comparing it to where we are now. And when Pastor brought that up, that's interesting to me because I wonder, one, the in her village in the Gara village, though they were called gatekeepers, and they play such a prominent role in that community. They're seeing as someone who are highly spiritual, who have one foot in the earthly realm and one foot in the spiritual realm, and people respect them greatly. And I wonder here, what have we done to that energy that we've not only quieted it, but we've almost committed a murder, uh, in a sense that we kind of cast them aside and have made them not only feel worthy, but mentally, spiritually, they've been decapitated and not feel alive enough to be who they truly are. So what does that energy, what does that energy, how has that played a role in who we are, especially in America, looking at our spirituality and even uh, without regarding homosexuality, if you will, any role that sex plays in our society, if it is not based on love and purity and intimacy for this, for as it's supposed to be, is it considered perverted? So all of this energy that is out there, to me, I'm asking the question, does it help perpetuate the violent people that we are in America? Because anything that is not done with intimacy is done through violence. And I wonder, anybody given any thought to that?
May I add something to what Ron is saying too? Grand Rising family, I'm noticing a lot of hermaphrodites are coming out too on social media, and they're having to go through the same thing that homosexuals have been dealing with. But now, I mean, it's like since we're in a new, I guess, beginning, they're coming out more, and you'd be amazed with the stories that they have. I just wanted to add that as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sexuality has always been a no-no in the church. Yet everybody's engaged in sex one way or the other. And I do believe that the energy of intimacy is different than the energy of simply having sex because it's available. I've said it before now, and I'll repeat it. If you manipulate a woman into having sex with you, man, and you're doing it simply because of its availability, and you have no attachments to that person, and don't plan to have any attachments whatsoever, that's a spiritual rape. Because you lied to get there, and you took advantage of the circumstance. Be honest, be truly intimate, as opposed to being selfish and seeking self-gratification, as opposed to gratification for the person with whom you're engaged in intercourse. I don't believe that we have the right to condemn anybody as homosexuals are being condemned. Isn't it appalling that you hear about the homosexuality with males, but when it comes to females, it's not so much? Why is that? Why is that? Because Christianity has taught that male homosexuals are weak and they're dirty and they should not be dealt with. However, lesbians are a source of pleasure for men. And that delineation has been there for years. And that also has to be dealt with if we are going to bring into existence a nation that is beneficial to everyone without regard to sexual orientation or without regard to what we call race, and without regard to their monetary means or material means. I think it's very important that we look at this in depth. The Native Americans saw homosexuals, male or female, as being want people to reverence, because they saw them as male and feminine, male energy and female energy, which is a physical representation of the androgynous creator. And in doing so, what they are actually saying is that being androgynous has very little to do with sexual organs. Being androgynous has everything to do with the spiritual nature. So if the masculinity and femininity are housed in the same body source, this is indicative of being androgynous, as is the creator androgynous, and discarded the whole theory that came from Europeans that God is a he and not a she, or not androgynous. So I believe that I'm sure that there are other aspects of this that you guys would like to talk about, but I just wanted to add that to what was being said, and I hope that is the road that you were riding or run or taking a walk. This is your journey with this.
Yeah, most definitely. I think it's one of the most misunderstood things in our society. And we keep in mind we are constantly being born again because from the moment we came out of the womb, we have been miseducated and misinformed. And we've been given uh, boundaries that have nothing to do with who we are as Africans. And it has kept us from seeing who we truly are. So I, I look at almost everything now with open arms and an open mind to see this thing because I think if you understand what the indigenous people, for lack of a better way of saying it, are saying about homosexuality, what you see is when you learn to embrace who you are and see uh, sexuality as a spiritual energy and not only is it a spiritual energy, it's who you are as a part of your experience, then you too are a gatekeeper because she constantly says in here we're not talking about when we call them gatekeeper, we're not talking about their sexual orientation. Nobody asked them about that. So what makes them gatekeepers? So we look at them, it's a spiritual thing that she's talking about. It is talking about people who stand in the gap, if you will, to preach that breach that mend the breach that people recognize and go to and understand that they have the ability and the desire to be spiritual for them, that I am the one that stands in the place of the community, and the community is on either side of me. It is past and it is future. I am the present. So in that sense, I see us all as being gatekeeper because of your desire to understand truth. And your desire also to I don't know if you can mend energy, but use it in the way that it was intended to be used and not in a perverted or selfish way.
You know, all of us are both masculine and feminine, which means that those who are homosexual just have a balance of both. Because if you're going to base it on femininity in terms of who we are, then all of us are homosexuals. It's not just based on having the hormones of male or female. It's not based just upon having the energy of a male and female. I do believe that homosexuality has speaks to something that's deeper than what we think in a spiritual way.
Yeah.
And the reason I say that is because homosexuality did not become a problem until Europeans made it a problem. It was not an issue with indigenous people until Europeans made it an issue. Not speaking about the the homosexuality that took place in Greece and Rome. And if homosexuality was so evil, then why is it that the Catholic Church still exists? If you're so much against child molestation, then why is it that the Catholic Church still exists? And the apple don't fall too far from the tree. Christianity, as we know it, these denominational denomination of Christianity came out of Catholicism. It came from the womb, where actually they don't even consider it a womb. Catholicism is masculine. And that in itself says that it views itself as being homosexual if it thinks it can birth something. At the very least, is androgynous. So what am I truly saying? I'm saying that just as we have sought to understand other principles, and in doing so, we have resurrected the truth about those principles. It is imperative that we do that now. And I'm not just saying that because I don't believe that homosexuals should be castigated. I'm saying it also because of the lie that is being perpetuated by the church. In Atlanta, there was a pastor who railed against homosexuality. And there was during that period when homosexuality became the enemy of America. And his son was his musician. And one Sunday, his son got up and walked out of the church. And as he was walking out, he said, I can't take it anymore. I'm gay. Well, the next Sunday, the pastor started preaching about how wrong it is for us to stigmatize gay people. Now, it was wrong as long as it wasn't in his house. But when he found that it was in his house, all of a sudden it became acceptable. If that is not duplicitous, what is it? So we have an obligation. We have a spiritual obligation to understand the spirituality of sexuality, especially when it comes to the perceived duality of gender in one person. Questions or comments?
I have a question.
Yes.
Yeah. So what are your thoughts? And I don't want to call it thoughts, but since we're just talking, what is your thoughts on the hermaphrodites?
I see the hermaphrodites the same way. They did not birth themselves. How is it that you can believe that all life comes from the Creator except for hermaphrodites? That doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense at all. My views about homosexuality was in league with the views of the church in homosexuality, and it was there for a long time. And what began to change me is I started thinking about this. If this is a sexual choice, then who wakes up in the morning and desire to be a homosexual knowing the abuse that homosexuals have to endure? That didn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
Nobody wakes up and decides that they're going to be a homosexual. But it also shows me the extent of the indoctrination that we have received. It's like we have been told things that we embraced without even thinking about them. And there, I've been in churches where they're lesbian, and nobody talks about them, and they know it. It's just the male, because white folk believe that maleness is about strength and dominance of femininity. And we're going to believe the same thing, that to be a male, You have to dominate the female. You have to be the man of your house instead of the man in your house. You have to be in charge of everything, and the female follows your lead. That's what we were taught, and as a result of that, that was it extended to how we dealt with homosexuality. And my views, of course, they are different, and I actually had made some statements about homosexuality from a pulpit, and in turn facing the choir and said some things that were horrible. At the time, I didn't think they were. However, when I went back to that same church, I turned to those same people and apologized to them. And Pastor wanted to understand why was I apologizing for something that God said was wrong. And I said, God did not say that was wrong. God did not say that. That's what we were taught, but that's not what the scripture says. So I'm saying that to say to you that I have been down that road, and I'm sure that most of us, especially males, have been down that road. And I ask you who are still on that journey, how do you deal with the people who are in your house, or your child, or your brother or sister who is gay? How do you deal with them? And some of you have people close to you who are gay and you don't even know it yet. And some of you do know it, but you're in denial. So how do you deal with that? Would you tell your child they can't come home because they're gay? When they did not choose to be gay? And these are not just rhetorical questions. They deserve answers. George?
Hey, good evening.
Go ahead, George. How you doing? Go ahead, George.
Hey, thank you, Mr. GCI.
So y'all decide between you, George, and Audrey.
Yeah, go ahead, Audrey. I yield.
Oh, thank you. I have a comment and a question. I remember we talked about this some couple years ago, maybe more. And we talked about how homosexuals, in society, even though our conclusion was sort of when women start to lose their voice, nature or whatever will find a way to bring balance to that. And we were saying that homosexuals brought balance to that situation in terms of women and their voices, which is kind of agreeing with what Ron was saying about in the Dakara village. The gatekeepers bring balance between men and women. But then my question is, what about, since we've talked about that, which was some years ago, I think.
You're right.
There's been a proliferation of people who were saying that they are non-binary. They're neither gender. So do they serve the same kind of purpose? Because especially now that homosexual people are being castigated and are kind of losing their voice. So now these other people arise. So are they serving the same kind of purpose of bringing balance between the genders?
I do believe that. I believe that they are. However, I also believe this, that when it comes to I'm a pronoun or I'm a cat, who has a litter box at school, I do believe that is an extension that goes further than the idea of sexuality. Let's just let me put it in simple terms. when it comes to anything, there are a group of people who take it to the nth degree, and they make it, they take it so far out there until it becomes foreign to the understanding of anyone. And what I mean by that is, I do not believe, well, let me put it this, what I do believe, that the gender issue that we are experiencing is a man concocted issue. I do not believe that is spiritual at all. I don't. I do believe that the issue with homosexuality, yes, but the issue with the binary issue, possibly yes, but the issue with don't call me them, it's just as opposed to a name, that is a bridge too far, I think, for spirituality.
Well, I mean, pronouns notwithstanding, I agree with you. Some people kind of join the bandwagon. But I do believe there are people who are really experiencing a feeling of not being one or the other, and they're androgynous, or they feel as if they're androgynous. And like homosexuals, I don't think they choose. I don't think the people who are really that, I don't think they choose it. Like, you know, some people who just go along for the ride.
Yeah.
I think there are some people who are really, really androgynous.
Oh, I believe that. I believe that 100%, Audrey.
Okay.
I do. I believe that. But the pronoun issues is a totally different story.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's more of a cultural phenomenon or whatever. But anyway, thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Now,
Watson.
George.
Yeah, I'll yield to George Watson. You on, George?
Hey, thank you. Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. GC out of Philly. One of the things I want to add is, and I go back to what Miss Evelyn said a couple of moons ago, we don't talk enough about sex. And she said, I don't know why. And Reverend Richard, you kind of responded, okay. And my opinion, whenever we follow the European manuscript for life, we as men can look at sex as a very conquering tool. And it shouldn't be like that. Yet if we follow their manuscript, that's what it is.
That's a nice way.
As an example, what'd you say, Mr. GC?
That's a nice way of saying rape. When you say
I ain't here. Oh, okay, but that's my opinion. Yet when we look at the aspect of platonic relationships from the male perspective, if the male comes to you and say, hey, I'm kind of concerned about this, it may not be from an aspect of sex, because the reality of it is you cannot stop two consenting adults from doing what they want to do. And my struggle in that arena, and I'm glad I had it, at that time, I didn't have anyone to relate to, didn't know how to relate to myself, didn't know how to relate to the Creator. And I'm trying to figure out my way out here in life. And I went all the way to Iraq to find out who George was, who Quicksand was, what's my purpose. So sex, to me, at 54 years of age, it can be very much overrated. And one of the things that I establish in any relationship that I have, male, female, woman, child, can you tolerate my stupidity? If you can tolerate my stupidity, and I can tolerate your experience, in essence, we can give birth to some things, which gives me some degree of a spiritual release or spiritual climax. When I listen to brothers who tell you, hey, I make $1.75 a year, and they think that's what pulled the female, I have to show them I ain't nowhere near what you make. Yet when I walk into the arena and they say, hey, George, how you doing? Doing a whole lot better now that I see y'all. People smile. Your $1.75 a year can't do that. Yet my $100,000 a year that does not factor in can do that. So when I look at the situation that took place with Mark Sanford, and he separated himself from his security detail to go be with Miss Argentina, forgot her name. And when he said on TV, this here is my soulmate, I automatically came to the conclusion this is not about sex. He has someone that he can relate to. And that's very important in any relationship. With Monique, it is difficult to deal with me. Very difficult.
George, we're not.
Okay, then that's enough.
Okay.
Thank y'all.
Thank you.
I will just say that everyone should have someone to relate to. And if we follow that manuscript of the European, we get European results. One of the things my grandfather used to say on my mama's side, he stated this, I'm not going to see it, yet y'all going to see it. And we be like, what you going to see? What you going to see? Y'all going to see a minister take a Bo Diddley in the pulpit. And lo and behold, the more we follow these Europeans and their lifestyle because we don't know our identity, that did happen. They caught a minister taking a dump in the pulpit. Now, that may be a Baptist thing.
Okay.
Yet,
we good, George. We good.
George,
we good.
Helping us find our identity plays a role in how we maneuver. Thank you. Have you ever heard that before, Reverend Richard?
No, I haven't, and I'm glad I didn't.
Well, you do know they caught someone, though.
First of all, sex is not overrated. The other thing is, why would someone want to be stupid when they know they're stupid? That doesn't make sense to say that my stupidity, we can burst something, because if you're saying you're stupid, that means you know you're stupid. So why would you want to continue to be stupid? That doesn't make sense. What we are talking about is sexuality. We are talking about the spiritual essence of sexuality with a primary look at homosexuality. And I don't subscribe to any opinion or idea or concept that sex is overrated. I think sex is disrespected. George from GC.
Yes, sir. I appreciate us, having a conversation about being an androgynous being. I mean, as you mentioned, we have both our parents in us in terms of our DNA, and just being able to, appreciate knowing oneself in reference to how the Dagara family, was able to, deal with being gatekeepers. I think that they didn't have, like separation where it came to the family. I think being able to not exclude someone, but to be inclusive, was something that I read that really helped me to appreciate our responsibility to the community. And so if it was a situation where, as masculinity or as a man, you know what I mean, and I'm the father of my children, but I think from what I was reading that it talked about the importance of all gatekeepers are people being able to be the fathers of a child. I mean, I know we don't want our children just to be with anyone, but I think looking at it from the spiritual perspective, you know what I mean? You don't exclude, someone who's able to bring spiritual enlightenment to where we are and what we're doing. Something else that came to my mind was in terms of we're talking about, sexuality with regards to adults. But what about those youth who are 16, 15, 14 who is starting to explore or be in situations where we need to be supportive or helpful to be able to have dialogue such as this. So I think the sexuality piece is a subject that we definitely, need to continue to explore. But at the same time, as an androgynous being or man or woman, I think it's just, helpful to have these kind of, conversations and dialogue, which I'm sure we will continue to do. I'm done.
Thank you, sir. And we'll continue it. But I think this time it's a bit different in that we're going into it more in depth than we have in the past. And is needed at this point in time. Otherwise, the ancestors would not have guided us in this direction. Right?
Audrey said something I absolutely love, and I had not thought of it. I've often thought, though, that we are, as George talked about one time, GC talked about it one time, repairers of the breach. I've often seen us that way, and I truly embrace that. In this conversation, what I've seen the last couple of days is sexual energy is no different than any energy out there that is misused. If you're not using it properly, it's misused. And we take it and turn it into violence. I mean, an example of that is you sitting on the porch or sitting there while somebody holds a gun to your head while you hear your wife or your daughter in the house screaming, that sort of thing. That's in your head. And you see that kind of violence. But the Creator has a way of bringing loving kindness into the earth. And I think homosexuality is one of those methods. There's going to be love and kindness in the world. If you don't know how to come together, male and female, but this needs to happen. This needs to be something to purify the energy. And when you talk about androgynous people, I see a lot of that as people who may know or not feel like they fit in one way or another, but they need guidance. And all of this energy out there that we talk about, you may take this energy and the violence may be go lynch somebody. It may be to go rape somebody, but it's energy that's out there for us to repurpose. And part of the tool of repurposing this energy is putting out there in the macro these people, these who may not feel attached to anything or anybody, to let them see who they are. So that's the beauty I get from this discussion. We have an opportunity to bring balance in a way that I had not considered before this. And we talk about energy all the time. I guess I never saw it this way until we pull all these thoughts together. But I think this is a beautiful place and a beautiful opportunity, and it kind of goes into what we were discussing yesterday. Sometimes you just sit still and you see things and let things play out. And I think what we are and where we are, there is no reason to fear. And all the tools, everything that is necessary, that is need to bring balance into earth is already here. It's already here. And that's what I see from this conversation.
Thank you, sir. Any questions or comments? You know, as we talk about this, the most detrimental religion on earth is Christianity. America is the most brutal country on earth. America has committed more violence in the modern era against people than anyone else on this earth. They have gone into places with the flimsiest reasons and murdered thousands, hundreds of thousands of people, and it's justified by Christianity. There's two things here. Christianity justifies that because it's people of color. The other thing is that Christianity says that we love life, yet it embraces the destruction through nuclear weapons. Islam is manipulative, and the manipulation of Islam is designed to control people, African people in particular, for the express purpose of dividing them. Judaism is behind the scenes and is all about money. And I don't care who hears this, it's just the truth. When you talk about the money, if you look at this country, when people began to say that Israel was committing genocide in Gaza, and they expressed their beliefs on college campuses, the Jews withdrew their money. You remember that? The only group of people in the world who you can't say that they're wrong are Jews, because they accuse you of being anti-Semitic. And if you say you're not, then they pull their money back. And enslavement had two factors that supported it, that made it what it was. One was Christianity and the other was Judaism, because the Jews are the ones who financed the ships. The Jews are the ones who equipped the ships for the journeys. So I'm saying that there is the only difference between Christianity and Judaism is that one finances the other. And there was a time in this country when Christians dealt with Jews the same way they dealt with us, except for when it came to business. And they played the game together to get to where they are. And I am very much aware of what I am saying. And I am very much aware that out of all the people on this earth who do not want to hear the truth is Jews. When you tell the truth about them, they come at you. And if they come at me, so be it. I got ancestors to protect me. But the truth must be told. Now, we talk about sexuality. Islam and Christianity are the two who condemn homosexuality more so than anybody else. The bottom line is this: every problem on this earth comes from religion. Christianity, Islam, Judaism is the root of every single problem on earth. They are the root of separation in this earth. And two of them, Christianity and Judaism, perpetuate racism like nobody else. And Islam also perpetuates racism and manipulates Africans in doing that, because Islam is controlled by the invaders who call themselves Arabs. So when we look at these three, every one of them are geared toward manipulating of the destruction of African people primarily. That's how the game is being played. And all of them makes every effort to keep the African in a place of poverty, keep them off balance, keep them fighting against each other. All of them are in league with each other to bring about the destruction of those who cannot be destroyed, the destruction of the African. Akabalon is the source of all spirituality. And the spirituality that has come from Akabalon has been manipulated by Arabs and Europeans in order to get us to this place where we are. And I am saying that right now, this whole concept of Jewish control and manipulation is being destroyed by virtue of what's happening in Israel today by the young people who are Jewish. Christianity is being destroyed by virtue of being supportive of a deranged man who is dismantling this system. And Islam is also being destroyed by virtue of it claiming to be a religion of peace, when in actuality, it is a religion of violence. And that violence we see in Boko Haram, these groups, African groups, who are being financed by Europeans, and they're being equipped with the weaponry to fight each other while the Europeans take all the spoils. And the Arabs, of course, by virtue of controlling the lands where the oil is, which is truly the land that belongs to the African. There is some I feel that there is some discomfort with some of the people with what I am saying, but the truth does not always make you comfortable, and the truth, the telling of the truth, always puts a bullseye on you. When you tell the truth without regard to softening it, so those who are fragile can embrace it. When you just simply tell the truth, you not only become a target, but you become hated. And there are those within the confines of the group that you are trying to protect, that you are trying to bring together in solidarity. They are the worst enemy to what we are talking about, because they are more European than the European in the way they think. And I have seen that in action. And I'm seeing that in action even now. If you want to be ostracized in this country, being an African, tell the truth about Christianity. If you want to be killed in Africa, tell the truth about Islam. If you want to be put in a position of poverty, of having everything taken away from you and you being in prison, tell the truth about Judaism. And if we are going to tell the truth, we must tell the truth about all of it. And every one of those that I just named, all three of them are guided by people with reprobate minds. And the castigation of the homosexuals has come through religion and religion only. There is nothing else. Even if a government condemns homosexuality, it does it because a religion told them to do it. All of this sexuality comes from religion. And the justification of raping our women came from religion. And if you truly believe that we are animals, then why would you rape us? Why would you even endeavor to engage with us? Again, that's projection. We are not animals. That barbarians are less than animals, because animals do not kill for the fun of it. They do not kill because they're greedy. They kill because they're hungry or protecting their territory. So this colony called America is here because it committed genocide against over 70 million people who were here when they got here. I'm done. Questions or comments?
Pastor, I have a comment.
Yes, ma'am.
I know we talked about earlier about sexuality. We talked about homosexuality and just people coming forward with that. I think at some point, this is my thought, that we probably need to talk about sexual violence against men. Because in my opinion, I feel like it's easier or acceptable for a female to come forward than it is for a male, because society has deemed that if a male has been sexually assaulted, whether he's homosexual or heterosexual, he's considered weak because he couldn't defend himself. And not just sexual violence from man against another man, but sexual violence of a man against a woman. That's all.
Thank you. And I agree with you. I agree with you wholeheartedly. When I was in the Army, that brought to memory, I was at Fort Sam Houston. And when I was there was two guys who were raped. And they were raped by men. And they suffered the trauma of it because they did not want anybody to know about it. So they would not get counseling of any kind. They would not even report the ones who raped them. So that is definitely something that needs to be dealt with and put in the macro. George or GC?
No, no comment.
Okay. Anyone else? We said a lot today. We covered a lot of ground. And I am very grateful for the openness that we have during our sessions, the discussions that we have. I am very, very, very proud of how we do this and how comfortable you guys feel in raising questions and making statements. And I desire for us to continue doing that without hesitation or reservation. And even if you're not speaking, you are speaking with your silence. Your presence is giving us the energy that's necessary to discuss what we're doing, as well as your energy being a guiding force as it is guided by the ancestors. The things that we talk about are not things that we sit back and say, well, maybe let's pick and choose what we're going to say. We don't do that. And I say this because I want to remind you guys that this is a spiritual venture. This is a spiritual journey. This is a spiritual experience. And everything that is done must be spiritual. And our day-to-day life must be guided by spirituality, as opposed to the religion or the governmental policies of this earth. Spirituality takes precedence over everything because spirituality existed before anything. Thank you. If there are no further questions or comments, I would say that I will see you guys tomorrow evening at 6 o'clock. And I do appreciate your conversation, your input as well. Have a good rest of your day.
Same to you, and thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye,
Thank you.
everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.